We need to talk about Amazon's The Wheel of Time TV show. Or rather, should I say, I need to talk about it because I've always been a huge fan of the book series. I first read it right after I graduated high school, at which time it was still being published. I did a whole video, one of my first videos, all about Norse mythology and the Wheel of Time, and I'll probably do a follow-up to that, going further into just some general mythologies that you will see referenced in the books. But the first season of the live-action Wheel of Time TV show has just come out, and this is something that has been long awaited. When I first started seeing the promo images for it, I was a little bit skeptical. We've had our Game of Thrones and we've had our Legends of the Seeker. So I was very curious to see which way this was going to fall, and especially because Amazon is also getting ready to come out with a Lord of the Rings TV show, and one criticism that the first book of The Wheel of Time, The Eye of the World, often receives is that it is very derivative of the Fellowship of the Ring. We start out with these 4 or 5 characters from a backwater, isolated region where everyone's just farmers and it's very peaceful, quiet, nothing ever happens, nothing ever changes. And then suddenly a strange wizard comes to town and they're swept up in a crazy adventure. They have to flee their homeland and get sucked into this larger world-saving plot. So I was very curious to see not only how was Amazon going to separate the Wheel of Time not only from the Lord of the Rings novels, but also from their own TV show that they're gearing up for. I will say that the first season of the Wheel of Time show does make a lot of changes from the plot of the novels. And overall, I think that this was a good thing, and I could see why they made the changes that they did in order to both move the story along and keep it from not only being repetitive and slow in and of itself, but also to separate it from the plot of the Fellowship of the Rings novels. Because The Eye of the World is definitely very similar to that storyline and those themes and even just beats that you will see in the story that plays across both series. So I have my little outline here to keep me on topic, and what I want to do is kind of break this video into 3 different parts, 3 or 4. First, I'm just going to rank the episodes of the show from best to worst, in my opinion. Then I'm going to go over some of the pros and the cons, what I liked and didn't like about the season overall, and then I'll throw out some season 2 predictions, where I think they're going to go with the story based on the books. So just be forewarned, spoilers abound in this video for both the TV show and all of the novels. They've been out for 20 years at this point. Be expecting that as someone who has read the books and seen all of the episodes of the show, that I'm just going, anything's on the table. But I am going to pretty much keep it focused to the Eye of the World, and then when I get into the predictions, maybe some plot lines from the next 2 books. Episode ranking. I think my favorite episode overall has to be the first episode, Leave Taking. And I think it's because, I was just really eager and excited to see what they were going to do with the world and with the characters, and I also still had that nervous optimism to see was it going to be really bad, because I had been lurking on Reddit and seen some leaks and spoilers that were going over some of what was going to be happening in the first episode, and I was like, what? Are you serious? Because It does set itself apart from the books pretty early on. We see the characters have been matured up in a lot of ways. Like, when I first heard there was going to be, like, a sex scene between Rand and Egwene, I was like, are you serious? Like, please don't MTV Shannara Chronicles this, for the love of God. But yeah, overall, I can see where the showrunners and the writers are going with the changes that they're making and why they're introducing things when they are, in order to set things up for later storylines. So in my mind so far, all of the changes that they've made have been, if not necessary, at least justified or justifiable in my mind. My second favorite episode is episode 7, the second to last episode, The Dark Along the Ways, because after stretching out this reveal all season of who is the Dragon Reborn, which for non-book readers, I understand why they kind of wanted to add that element of mystery to keep people guessing and talking. The books make it pretty clear from the beginning that Rand is like the very special boy, the one of these things is not like the other. He's the only one who looks the way he does in Emond's Field. He's the main POV character for Eye of the World, and it reveals that he was not originally born in Emond's Field really early on in the novels, whereas in the show, we don't get the reveal of Rand's origins until this episode. So I was really not only just excited to finally see that, but I kind of had my low proud moment, because I had kind of predicted that when we didn't get Tam's reveal to Rand in his fever dreams, that he found Rand as a baby. We didn't get that scene before they all had to leave Emond's Field. I had in the back of my mind, well, since they're dragging this out, hopefully we will get a flashback then in a later episode where it will be revealed that Tam did have this conversation or did reveal this information in front of Rand at the beginning. And sure enough, we did get that brief flashback to Rand carrying Tam after the Trolloc attacks, and he reveals some information as to Rand's true origins. And so I wish that we had gotten a little bit more of that throughout the series. They did a good job of hinting at all of the other characters having strange new changes, strange new powers, but Rand didn't really have a lot to say or do throughout the show while they were trying to hide that he was the dragon. So for me, there was a lot of build up, but I think it was a satisfying payoff to me, not only as a show watcher, but as a book reader, to finally see those flashbacks where we're seeing things from Rand's point of view that we weren't seeing before. And yeah, seeing the hints that when he broke through that door or channeled in the ways that was him. My third favorite episode, I guess, and kind of all of these middle episodes can be lumped into one kind of ball of meh as far as I'm concerned, which I hate to say. I'm really hoping that as the books start to pick up and explore new plot lines and new locations and the storyline really starts to build steam, that the show will as well, because they did have a lot of upfront world building to do in this series for non-book readers. So I understood, even though I felt like these derivations from the plot of the books where we don't go to Baerlon, we don't go to Whitebridge, we don't go to Caemlyn, we only really have Emond's Field, the Tower, we do see Tar Valon, we do see the Tower, and then Faldara are the main places. In the book series, I don't think actually visit Tar Valon and the White Tower in the first novels, at least not in the first book. So I kind of understood why they had to spend some time there world building the Aes Sedai and giving us a glimpse of what this main power structure in the world is, and introduce the different Ajas and the fact that there are different factions, because this is all going to play in hugely in the later novels, and it's one of my favorite storylines. You know, we really definitely get into a lot of that political intrigues, along with a lot of world building and cultural building as the main characters go out and explore. Even though at times I felt like this was slowing down the plot and taking away a lot from the main characters, to its detriment at times, I understand why they wanted to introduce these players and these settings early on. In some episodes I was here for it, and in others not so much. I didn't really understand why we had to spend so much time with Logain as the false dragon, because he doesn't really come back in to the story until much later. And the whole camp in the woods and the battle between the Aes Sedai and Logain's faction and the king from Gildan, I just felt like, yeah, we got to see a lot of cool uses of the One Power and building up Liandrin and the Reds as a potential, what's the literary term I'm looking for? Antagonist, that's it, as a potential antagonist later on, which she definitely is. We see a lot of that. So overall, even though I wasn't quite happy with the writing and the way the storyline was written in this episode, it was a very cool episode. There was a lot that happened. You know, we got to see some of the different Aes Sedai factions, and one of my favorite characters, which I'll get into in the prose list later, is Alana. I really like the Greens as an Aja overall, so I like that we got to see some Green Aja and see Alana introduced as a character. I really like the actress that they cast for her and her character, and I hope we see more of her. And I did like some of the storylines that they had going on in this episode, with the reveal of Nynaeve as a super powerful channeler and things like that, and showing them stilling a male channeler or gentling them and what that looks like. My next favorite episode, which I think these two are kind of interchangeable, would be episode 3, A Place of Safety, because Tom Marilyn. Really, every other storyline can be thrown out and is meh as far as I'm concerned, except for I really liked the Rand, Matt, and Tom storyline that we got. Because in the novels, Tom is introduced in Emond's Field. He shows up along with Pot and Fane, the peddler, and they're kind of competing for who gets to be the showboat and the center of attraction here. But then he doesn't really do anything while they're fleeing Emond's Field and until they get to Whitebridge and Baerlon and some of the other cities. He's just kind of in the background without a real part to play. So I understood why, with having to introduce so many characters and so many things in that first episode, why we didn't see him until later. So, spoilers for the later novels, Tom does show up again later in the storyline and has major parts to play as far as helping the Emond's Fielders. So yeah, spoilers, he's not dead. Can we just assume that fantasy sci-fi rules apply, where if you don't actually see a body on screen, that they are not confirmed dead. I really liked his introduction, the way he played off of Matt and Rand and kind of just already taking them under his wing, introducing his backstory with his nephew, a channeler, as a way of giving some exposition into male channelers and why it's such a bad thing to be a male who can channel in this world, and if one of them is the dragon, what they might have to sadly be in store for and look forward to. And then him, helping them with the whole Dark Friends storyline and the introduction of Dark Friends, and that introduction to the hint that Rand has powers. I think they played that all really well and really subtly, but still with enough of a hint. It really plays off of a beat from the Eye of the World novels, where Rand is trapped somewhere with a dark friend and he's able to channel his way out of it. Next, episode 6, The Flame of Tar Valon. I really liked the introduction of Siuan Sanche as the Amerlin seat. I think that the actress that they got and the casting with that is so on point. They definitely got her hard-bitten attitude in there. I really like that we got more of the relationship between her and Moiraine revealed, because it's really only hinted at in the novels that they were really close growing up when they were training together in the tower, but that once Swan became Amerlin, she had to make that separation so as to not be showing favoritism to her Aja. And it is subtly hinted at in the novels that the reason Moraine has been away from the tower for so long and avoids going back is that they supposedly did not leave on good terms. But it's only ever really hinted at. So I like that we get more direct showing of the different factions, the different machinations and plottings that has to go on behind the scenes between people to get their agendas done. But the reason I also rank it so low is that I didn't like the way that Moraine's trial was handled, along with just some of the other story beats in this episode with everyone regrouping together in Tar Valon. I thought in some places it was just kind of messily handled. I didn't like Egwene and Perrin being captured by the White Cloaks so close to Tar Valon. I feel like the White Cloaks, they are not that big of a deal as they make themselves out to be. And yes, our story characters do run into them a lot early on in the novels and kind of they're set up as an antagonist, but they don't have that much authority outside of their own country, and their country as it is like barely a country, you know? It's kind of like the Vatican. Like when you're in the Amadisian city, the White Cloak city, where they rule, they have power and authority, but outside of that, they kind of just talk a big game. They only have as much authority as people are willing to give them. And so I feel like even though they are set up as being really against channeling and the Aes Sedai witches, I don't know if they'd really have the balls to go that close to the tower and to the Aes Sedai city. I don't know, man. So just the way they kind of handled everyone coming together there and meeting back up, I thought was kind of sloppily handled, which is why that my sixth favorite episode is episode 5, Blood Calls Blood, where we see the storyline with the warder, Stepan, who lost his Aes Sedai, and we get some plot building as far as the Aes Sedai warder bond to set that whole thing up between Lan, Moraine, and Nynaeve. But I felt like it just took too far away from the main characters. Like I said, I understand why they had to go to the city to introduce some world building things that will play in later, but it just took too much away from the main storyline, in my opinion, and left them without a lot of time to build up the main characters and their storylines. Sadly, my second least favorite episode was episode 2, Shadows Waiting, even though I felt like in the novels... Hi, Merlin. It's lunchtime. I felt like in the novels, the stopping in Shadar Logoth was a lot spookier. It just had a lot more emphasis put on it and time spent around it. And I don't know, just the whole episode overall was a bit meh for me as far as pacing and storyline. And my least favorite episode, sadly, was the finale, episode 8, The Eye of the World. Overall, it was just weak sauce. I didn't like Moraine and Rand going off by themselves into the Blight, at least not without Lan. I really feel like Moraine would not leave Lan behind like that. I understand why they left the other characters behind after knowing that they don't need to be there. And I understand why they were trying to rework the storyline overall, because the end of The Eye of the World is just kind of leaves you with a big head scratcher, even if you are familiar with things as they've been laid out up until this point. I feel like Robert Jordan almost pulled from too much. He tried to make too many references and put too many things into the finale. Like, we did see a lot. We saw a couple other Forsaken show up, but they were killed immediately and we never hear of them again. So I get why we're kind of cutting them out and focusing on the main Forsaken that we'll see later on in the novels. As far as Baal-Zaman is concerned, I liked the interaction between him and Rand being pulled into this other world, this false world, this illusion set up by the Dark One to try and trick him. It is, kind of stated that the Dark One doesn't necessarily want to stop the dragon, because if they can convert the dragon to the dark side, that's even better for them. So that part all made sense, but I do feel like it almost hints a little bit too closely at the grand finale that we see in Memory of Light and the final battle. There was just a lot of things that happened in this episode that I was just really not happy with, and I felt like it broke a lot of in-story rules. And I understand with, the departure of the actor playing Matt, why they might have had to scramble to do some reshoots and some reworking, and why that then might just be kind of lackluster as a result, but there were just some specific things that I took issue with in that episode overall. So, that being said, let's go back over to all of my pros and the things that I really liked. The casting and the acting is on point. I really like all of the actors and the performances that they give, even though we don't get to spend a lot of time really getting to know our Emmons Field 5. I really liked all of the acting and the way that the characters are portrayed. Even though the plot lines are changed, I think the reason that I'm overall satisfied with the show as a whole, despite some of the pacing and whatnot, is that the way they're portraying these characters still feels true to the soul of the characters in the books as I see them. Favorites especially, like Oscar definitely goes to Egwene, the actress playing Egwene. She just manages to convey so much just with her eyes, and just even those hints of that strong Egwene attitude. I think she just really captured Egwene's essence, and just, her performance does such a good job of evoking emotion. I also really liked Swan. I liked Lan, even though Lan is not the stone-faced warder that we see in the books. I'm okay with that. Like, this is a show. We can't have all the Aes Sedai always being like Aes Sedai, smooth-faced, calm, because we need, it's a show. We have to show, not tell. We have to know what they're thinking and feeling, because we can't see into their head. I also really liked Leandrin. I hope we see more of her. I think we definitely are, because she plays a lot into Egwene and Nynaeve's training in the tower and storylines with Book 2. So I think they really did a good job casting someone with a strong performance of just someone she's got something going on behind the scenes. Like, she's just giving off shady vibes, Like, she does such a good job of just being wholly unpleasant and just leaving you with a bad taste in your mouth. My dislike, and I think people are really going to disagree with me on this one, and I might get some hate for it, but I honestly was not a big fan of Matt's characterization and portrayal in the show. I think, I get that for a lot of the storyline, he's tainted by that Shadar Logoth cursed dagger, which is kind of going all Gollum One Ring on him. But Matt is like a prankster, he's a jokester, he's really lighthearted, and I felt like at the first half, we didn't see enough of that. I understood why we got the portrayal and the characterization of him that we did, to set up like why he might be tempted to steal such a thing in the first place, but I don't know. It wasn't the Matt that I was expecting or wanting based on my vision of Matt. So sue me. But honorable mention, definitely I want to throw out to Rand, even though he didn't have a lot to do in this series. He does a really good job with the scenes that he does get and with the acting, and those hints of like angry, stubborn, questioning Rand, who's going to push back against Moiraine and not just always take her word.
Boss is arrested.
So we definitely got some good hints of that. And as I said, I really liked Alana. I liked the actress that they cast for her and the way that she was acting as the Green, so I hope we see more of her. She was one of my favorite characters that we saw. The landscapes and the scenes were really cool, even though we didn't get to see like White Bridge or things like that. We didn't get to see Tar Valon. And even though the depiction of the tower was not as like straight ivory tower as I was imagining, I really liked the landscapes and the scenes that we got to see. And I did, even though like I was a little taken out of place by like the costuming choices and design choices that they chose at first, once I really got into like the world that they were building, I do like the way they went with like set direction and art direction and costumes and things like that, because otherwise, Wheel of Time, I think, is supposed to be set in more of like a Renaissance era setting, because we have like books and printing presses and like steam technology gets introduced later. So it's not as medieval. I think the Trolloc Wars would have been more the medieval setting. Otherwise, it would have been too similar to your typical medieval Lord of the Rings style high fantasy if they hadn't really made a point of distinguishing themselves setting and costume wise. The Trollocs and the Myrddraal were badass. The whole like attack on Winter's Night I felt like was shot so well to depict just the confusion and abject terror that people who have never seen a Trolloc in their life and think that they're just creatures out of stories, like capturing how that would feel to suddenly find yourself face to face with one in real life. And they did a really good job portraying the Trollocs and the Myrddraal as like really close to how they are in the books, of being like these weird combinations of men and beasts. So yeah, I was really satisfied overall with the depictions of that, and with the SFX depictions of channeling. Wasn't quite how I would have pictured it, but I like the way that they're going with it so far, and I liked the slow reveal of who was the Dragon Reborn, and adding in that mystery of like it could be any of them, including the girls. I like that they also made Egwene a Ta'veren, because in the books only the three boys are Ta'veren, but Egwene has just as important of a role to play in the story, and brings about just as much change and has just as important of a role by the end of the books. So I don't see why she would not be a Ta'veren at that point. Alright, cons. What I didn't like. Not enough episodes. Please let them have 10 episodes at least, or longer episodes or something. I hear everyone saying that like Amazon's show structures are just to have 8 episodes per season, but for the length of these books and the amount of character and storyline that you need to fit in, especially if you're going to have to be combining things, like please, Amazon, for the love of God, give them more than 8 episodes to work with. Land and Nynaeve, I thought it went a little too fast. I understand why they want to introduce it early on, but it was a little too much too quick for me. But my biggest thing that I did not like was the show, I think, breaks fundamental rules regarding the use of the One Power. This is my biggest pet peeve. And that's why I didn't like episode 8 as much as I did. It's cool that we get to show women who can channel linking, but I don't know that someone who was not able to make it through training to become an Aes Sedai would know how to do that by herself. Like someone who only made it to the level of an accepted, would she know how to link? Because so much has been lost since the Age of Legends that I feel like women know how to link, but unless you're fully trained, like really strong Aes Sedai, I don't know if you would know how to do that. I don't know that a woman who did not attain the rank of Aes Sedai would be allowed to wear a ring outside of the tower like that, like Lady Amalista does. And not only do we show them linking, but we show people being burned out in a link, which is not supposed to be possible. Linking with other people who can channel is supposed to redistribute the flow evenly amongst everyone so that burning out or drawing too much of the One Power becomes impossible. So I didn't like that, and then I didn't like afterwards that we basically saw Egwene with no knowledge, training whatsoever, pretty much healing Nynaeve from the brink of death. Because later on, we see in another book coming up soon that Rand himself tries to do this, tries to bring someone back from the dead, and he's not able to, and it's a big point of contention with him and sets up some big angsty storylines for him in the future, and it's very much emphasized that, like, there are a lot of things the One Power can do, but bringing someone back from death is not one of them. And then at one point, I think during the episode The Dragon Reborn, it's kind of almost played off like Logain can see women's weaves, because he makes reference to seeing the brightness of Nynaeve as she's channeling to heal everybody. Men are not supposed to be able to see women's weaves, and vice versa. I don't know if she was just that strong, because, like, it's hinted at in the books that, like, Rand kind of gets, like, a shiver down his spine or goosebumps when he's around a woman channeling, and so he can kind of sense that they're touching the One Power in that way. So I don't know if Nynaeve was just that strong and channeling that much that Logain was able to see some of it, or what. The other thing was the use of the oath rod, like Moraine being forced to take another oath on the oath rod, and her whole, like, exile and banishment. I really took issue with that. I understand why she had to be exiled or sent away from the tower, because reasons, but I feel like exile is a last resort in the novels and viewed as, like, above and beyond and a really harsh punishment, let alone, like, forcing someone to take another oath on the oath rod is just, like, something that is not done. And it comes to be a big point of contention in a storyline in the later novels. I didn't really like that. I thought it was way harsh on Swan's part, especially when Leandrin is the one that was leading the link in the case of gentling Logain. So I don't know why she was not punished, like, equally as harshly. I get that Swan didn't want to show favoritism to the Blues, and that the Reds are a really strong, large faction amongst the Tower, but personally, I hope we see this come back. As much as I like Swan, I hope we see this come back to majorly bite her in the ass in later seasons, because later on, she does end up being ousted from her position. So I'm wondering if that's going to be one of the reasons why some of the other Aes Sedai come to not trust her or want her to be in power anymore, is because of the punishment of Moraine. I don't know, but I wasn't very happy about that. I didn't like the throwaway Rand, Perrin, Egwene love triangle. I felt like it was unnecessary. There wasn't enough build-up to justify it. It just came out of left field for drama and then is never brought up again. My other biggest thing that I didn't like is no Bail Domon! How dare you omit Bail Domon? I get that we had to omit some storylines for time, but it's bad enough that we didn't see enough Tom. It's bad enough that we didn't see Elias. Bail Domon is one of my favorite characters. He does come back in later books in a big way, so we better get him in season 2, because I was very mad that we did not get the introduction of Bail Domon and his boat in this season. Those were my biggest gripes overall. And now, wrapping up, I want to get into my season 2 predictions. What I think they're setting it up for is they're going to combine storylines from Book 2, which I think is The Great Hunt, and Book 3, The Dragon Reborn, which is the hunt for the Horn of Valere, which was stolen from Faldara by Padan Fain at the end of Season 1. And so some of the characters are going to have to chase after him, probably Perrin. And then I think what they're going to do is, since we saw Loyal get injured, they're going to take him back to Tar Valon, and they're all going to go back to Tar Valon to try to find Mat to heal Loyal, and then go on from there. Rand's storyline is going to follow the Portal Stone journey, meeting Selene, and instead of ending up in Falma to face off with the Shan-Chan, it might lead everybody to the Stone of Tyr instead, but I'm not sure. But yeah, I think we're going to get some merging of Rand going off on his own, like he does during The Dragon Reborn, where everyone's just looking for Rand, and he's dealing with coming to terms with being the Dragon Reborn, and everyone chasing after the Horn. I think at some point we might get a cold open in Caemlyn, where we see Elida, who is a Red Sister, who acts as advisor to the Queen of Andor. She will be summoned back to the tower for some reason, and she will bring the Princess Elaine with her, because the heirs to the throne are all, it's a matriarchy, matrilineal dynasty, and at some point all of the women are sent for training at the tower. So I think we will see them both go to the tower, where Elaine will be introduced, Elida will be introduced as characters, and she will meet Egwene and Nynaeve. They will train together and then go off on their storyline with the, spoilers, hunt for the Black Aja. I think Matt is going to be captured and cured by the Aes Sedai of the dagger, because Moraine sicked the Red Aja on him at the end of season 1, and he's going to be changed by that, and it's possibly going to put him on the radar of the wrong people within the tower, which might be used as a way of explaining why he would not only be acting differently, but possibly look differently too, since he has been recast. Other than that, I'm not really sure. I'm curious to see where they're going to have Rand end up, because he was kind of like wandering off to the middle of nowhere at the end of the season, so I'm wondering if he's going to find his way into the Waste and meet the Aiel and introduce that storyline, or if he'll just make his way back south through like Carrion and places like that. So I'm curious to see what locations they'll end up going to in season 2. I think we're going to see some combining of storylines. Those are just my 2 cents. I just wanted to get here and sit down in front of a camera to be able to ramble and vent to my little heart's content about the show and my thoughts, feelings, and opinions on it. So yeah, I hope you liked it. Look forward to posting some more Wheel of Time relevant content here in the near future. So I hope you liked my rant. And until next time, stay classy, Pagan.